The wedding dress was covered in blood. Not hers, not yet. But the crimson stains spreading across the white silk told Ethan Deckard everything he needed to know about the kind of night this would become. The woman who'd just thrown herself into the back of his yellow cab was trembling, mascara streaking down her porcelain cheeks, her breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps that fogged the rear-view mirror. "Drive," she choked out, her voice raw with terror. "Please, God, just drive anywhere but here." Ethan's hands were already on the wheel before his mind caught up. 5 days into this crazy experiment, playing taxi driver in his own city, pretending to be just another working man grinding through the night shift, and he picked up drunks, tourists, cheaters, and liars. But never a runaway bride with blood on her dress and pure panic in her eyes. He slammed his foot on the gas. The cab lurched forward just as a man in a tuxedo burst through the doors of the Plaza Hotel behind them, his face twisted with rage. Ethan caught a glimpse in the side mirror. Expensive suit, cold eyes, the kind of predator who wore wealth like armor. The man's mouth opened in a shout, his hand reaching toward them as if he could drag the cab back through sheer force of will. "Faster," the woman whispered, and Ethan heard something break in her voice. "Please." The plaza's lights blurred into streaks as Ethan wove through Manhattan traffic with the kind of precision that came from a lifetime of being behind the wheel, though usually it was a Bugatti, not a Crown Victoria that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having an incredible day wherever you are in this amazing world. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. New York? London? Tokyo? I love hearing from you all. And listen, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button right now because trust me, you do not want to miss where the story is going. This one's going to take us on a wild ride. Now, back to Ethan and his mysterious runaway bride. 3 blocks. 5. 10. Ethan didn't slow down until the plaza was a distant memory and the woman's breathing had shifted from panic to something closer to shock. He glanced in the rearview mirror again, studying her properly this time. She was beautiful in that devastating way that made men stupid. High cheekbones, full lips, dark hair that had probably been styled into something elegant hours ago but now fell in wild waves around her shoulders. Mid-20s, maybe. Young enough to still believe in fairy tales. Old enough to know when one had turned into a nightmare. The blood on her dress caught the streetlights as they passed under them. A handprint on her shoulder. Splatter across the bodice. "Are you hurt?" Ethan's voice came out rougher than he intended. 7 years of Harvard Business School and a decade building a tech empire, and he still couldn't smooth the Brooklyn out of his accent when he was rattled. "No." She touched the stain almost absently, as if surprised to find it there. It's not mine."
"Whose is it?"
Her eyes met his in the mirror. Green, he noticed, the color of sea glass, and for a moment he saw something fierce flicker there beneath the fear. "Someone who tried to stop me from leaving." Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. He'd spent the last week driving strangers around his city, listening to their stories, trying to remember what it felt like to be normal. To be seen as just a guy making a living instead of Ethan Deckard, the 32-year-old CEO of Deckard Technologies, worth $2.3 billion and perpetually ranked on Forbes' most eligible bachelors list, a title that had become a curse. Because every woman who smiled at him, every date that seemed promising, every relationship that might have been real, they all ended the same way. The moment they learned his net worth, something shifted. The way they looked at him changed. Suddenly their laughter was a little too bright, their interest a little too intense, and he could practically see them calculating what his love was worth in dollars and cents. So he'd made a deal with himself, 1 week. 7 nights driving a cab he'd bought under a fake company name, wearing jeans and a leather jacket instead of Tom Ford suits, being nobody special. Just a driver. Just a man. Trying to remember who he'd been before the money made him invisible. Tonight was supposed to be his last night. He should have known the universe would have other plans. "Where do you want to go?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice gentle. The woman was still trembling, her fingers twisted in the silk of her dress, like she was holding herself together by force of will alone. She let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so broken. I don't know. I don't. I didn't think past getting out. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I just knew if I married him tonight, I'd never get another chance. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He'd seen a lot in his week on the streets. The city revealed itself differently at night, showed you its scars and secrets. But this was different. This woman wasn't running from a bad date or a rough neighborhood. She was running from something that had taken her last ounce of courage to escape. What's your name? He asked. A pause. Long enough that he thought she might not answer. Then, Clarice. Another pause. Clarice Liddel.
I'm Metan.
He didn't give his last name. For once, he was grateful for the anonymity. And Clarice? You're safe now. I promise you that. He didn't know if it was a promise he could keep. Didn't know what he was getting himself into or who was chasing her. But he knew with bone-deep certainty that he couldn't let her face this alone. Clarice's reflection in the mirror shifted as she finally looked up, really looked at him for the first time. Her green eyes were still red-rimmed from crying, but there was something else there now, a desperate kind of hope that made Ethan's chest ache. Why are you helping me? She asked. You don't even know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous. Ethan met her gaze in the mirror and felt something shift inside him, some tectonic plate of his carefully ordered life sliding out of alignment. I don't think you're the dangerous one in this story, Clarice. She flinched at that, and he knew he'd hit closer to the truth than she wanted to admit. The cab's radio crackled with dispatch chatter, other drivers calling in fares, navigating the endless pulse of the city. Ethan ignored it. For the first time in a week, he wasn't just another taxi driver picking up another passenger. This was something else. Something that felt like fate wrapping its fingers around his throat. The blood, Clarice said suddenly, her voice hollow. It was my father's. Ethan's foot eased off the gas, the cab slowing as he processed that. What happened? He tried to stop them. When I ran. She was staring at her hands now, at the white-knuckled grip she had on her dress. My fiancé's security. They grabbed me right outside the ceremony room. I was so close, Ethan. So close to getting out. And my father, her voice cracked. He got between us. Told me to run. And they hit him. Just hit him. Like he was nothing. The fury that rose in Ethan's chest was primal, protective, and completely irrational. He didn't know this woman. Had met her exactly 7 minutes ago. But the thought of anyone hurting her, of anyone thinking they had the right to force her into something she didn't want. Is he okay? Ethan asked. Your father? I don't know. The words came out as a sob. I just ran. I'm a coward. I just ran and left him there, and... You're not a coward. Ethan's voice cut through her spiral with quiet certainty. You're a survivor. There's a difference. The city lights painted shadows across Clarice's face as they drove deeper into Manhattan, away from the plaza, away from whatever hell she'd escaped. But Ethan could feel it, that creeping sensation that running wouldn't be enough. That whoever wanted her back wouldn't stop just because she'd made it 3 miles away in a taxi. Tell me about him, Ethan said. Your fiancé. Who is he? Clarice's laugh was bitter. Does it matter?
Rich.
Powerful. The kind of man who thinks he can own people like their property. She met his eyes in the mirror again. The kind of man who always gets what he wants. Something cold slithered down Ethan's spine. He'd known men like that. Hell, in some circles, he probably was that man, the one with enough money and influence to bend the world to his will. The thought made him sick. Not this time, Ethan said. This time, he doesn't get what he wants. Clarice stared at him for a long moment, and Ethan could see her trying to decide if she could trust him. If this stranger in a taxi could possibly be what he seemed, someone who gave a damn about her as a person, not a possession. Finally, she nodded. Just a small dip of her chin, but it felt like a covenant. I need to make a call, she said quietly. Check on my father. But I can't. He'll trace my phone. He has people everywhere. Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a burner phone he'd bought for the week, part of his experiment in anonymity. He passed it back to her without a word. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and the jolt of electricity that ran through him was undeniable. Inappropriate, given the circumstances. But real. So dangerously real. As Clarice dialed with shaking hands, Ethan made his own decision. This wasn't just a fare anymore. This wasn't part of his social experiment or his search for authentic human connection. This was the night that would change everything. He just didn't know yet how much. Or that the man Clarice was running from was the same man who'd been trying to destroy Ethan's company for the last 2 years. The same man who'd made it his personal mission to take everything Ethan had built and burn it to the ground. But he'd learn soon enough. What happens when the taxi driver realizes the runaway bride is connected to his greatest enemy? Can Ethan keep Clarice safe without revealing who he really is? And what will it cost them both when the truth finally comes out? Clarice's voice cracked on the third ring.
Daddy?
Oh God, Daddy, please pick up. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, giving her privacy while every instinct screamed at him to listen, to understand what kind of danger they were really in. He navigated toward the financial district, where the buildings stood like silent sentinels and the streets emptied after dark. Somewhere they could think. Somewhere they could breathe. He's alive, Clarice gasped, and the relief in her voice nearly broke him. Concussion. Broken nose. But alive. A pause. Then her voice hardened.
No.
Absolutely not. I'm not coming back. I don't care what Vincent threatens. Vincent. The name hit Ethan like a sledgehammer.
It couldn't be.
The universe wasn't that cruel, that twisted, that. Vincent Stratton can go to hell, Clarice hissed into the phone. Tell him I'd rather die than. She stopped listening. I know what the contract says. I know what we owe him. But there has to be another way. There has to. Ethan's hands went numb on the steering wheel.
Vincent Stratton.
Vincent fucking Stratton. The man who'd spent 2 years systematically trying to destroy Deckard Technologies. Who'd poached Ethan's best engineers, undercut his contracts, spread rumors about security flaws that didn't exist. Who'd smiled at him across boardroom tables with the dead-eyed charm of a shark circling wounded prey. Vincent Stratton, who was apparently also the kind of monster who forced women into marriage. The cab swerved slightly as Ethan's vision tunneled. He corrected quickly, but not before Clarice looked up. Her conversation paused. Are you okay? She asked, genuine concern cutting through her own panic.
Fine.
The lie tasted like ash. Just dodging a pothole. She studied him for a moment longer, those sea-glass eyes too perceptive, before returning to her call. I have to go. Keep Daddy safe. I'll figure something out. I love you. She ended the call and handed the phone back to Ethan. Their fingers brushed again, and this time the electricity felt like a warning. Your father's going to be all right? Ethan asked, his voice carefully neutral. Physically, yes. Clarice's hand drifted to the bloodstain on her dress again, a nervous habit. But Vincent owns him now. Owns all of us. My father's company, Liddel Imports, it's been in our family for 3 generations. But we made mistakes. Got desperate during the pandemic. And Vincent, she swallowed hard. Vincent offered to bail us out. $50 million to save everything my father built. In exchange for what? Ethan already knew the answer. Men like Vincent didn't give anything without extracting blood in return. Me. The word was barely a whisper. The contract said partnership, merger of companies. But Vincent made it clear, marry him or he calls in the debt. My father loses everything. Our employees, over 300 people, they all lose their jobs. And my father, he's proud, Ethan. Too proud. He thought he could control Vincent, could manage the situation. Her laugh was hollow. No one controls Vincent Stratton. If you're feeling this story, drop a comment below and let me know. Are you team run forever or team fight back? And make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to get intense. Ethan's mind raced, cataloging facts, calculating angles. Vincent had been buying up smaller companies for months, consolidating power in the import-export sector. Ethan had noticed, kept tabs on his enemies' movements like a chess player tracking pieces on a board, but he hadn't known about Liddel Imports. Hadn't known Vincent's latest acquisition came with such a horrific price tag. Tell me about Vincent. Ethan said, pulling into a quiet side street near the South Street seaport. He killed the engine, twisted in his seat to face her properly for the first time. In person, without the barrier of the rearview mirror, Clarice was even more striking. Not just beautiful, though she was that, undeniably, but there was an intelligence in her eyes, a steel beneath the fear that told him she was stronger than she looked. The kind of woman who'd run through a hotel full of witnesses in a blood-stained wedding dress because staying was worse than any humiliation. The kind of woman who deserved better than a monster like Vincent. "What do you want to know?" Clarice asked warily. "Everything. How you met. What he's capable of. Why you agreed to marry him in the first place." She flinched at the last question, shame flickering across her features. "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." "Easy for you to say." Bitterness crept into her voice. "You're not the one watching your father's life's work circle the drain. You're not the one seeing your family's legacy, your employees' livelihoods, hang in the balance." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly small in the vast white dress. "Vincent approached us 8 months ago.
Charming.
Sophisticated. Said he admired what my father had built. The way he looked at me that first meeting," she shuddered. "Like I was already his. Like it was decided before anyone asked me." "And your father agreed?" "Not at first." Clarice's voice dropped. "But Vincent is patient. He started slow, casual dates, business dinners where I was expected to attend. Then the pressure increased. Gifts I couldn't refuse. Invitations I couldn't decline. And every time I pushed back, something would go wrong with Daddy's company. A shipment lost. A contract mysteriously canceled. Vincent never threatened directly, but the message was clear." Ethan's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Classic Vincent. Weaponizing leverage, making people destroy themselves rather than getting his hands dirty. 6 weeks ago, Vincent proposed. In front of everyone at a charity gala. How could I say no? The cameras, the crowd, my father standing right there with this desperate hope in his eyes. Clarice's voice broke. So I said yes. And Vincent smiled like he'd won a prize. That's all I've ever been to him, a prize. Proof that he can take whatever he wants. "What changed tonight?" Ethan asked. "Why run now?" Clarice met his eyes, and the raw honesty there stole his breath. "Because this afternoon, during the rehearsal dinner, I overheard Vincent on the phone with his lawyer. Talking about the prenup, about," she paused, gathering courage, "about how quickly he could have me declared incompetent after the wedding. How easily he could take control of my inheritance, my shares in my father's company." He was laughing, Ethan. Laughing about how I thought I had any power at all. The rage that had been building in Ethan's chest exploded into something cold and focused. He knew Vincent was ruthless in business, but this was a different level of evil. And then tonight, before the ceremony, his head of security cornered me in the bridal suite. Clarice's hand unconsciously touched her shoulder, where bruises were probably already forming beneath the blood-stained silk. Said Vincent wanted to make sure I understood the rules. That I belonged to him now. That if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure my father had an accident. That he has people everywhere, police, judges, politicians. That there's nowhere I could run where he couldn't find me. "That's when you ran," Ethan said. "That's when I ran." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Stupid, right? No plan. No money. My purse is still in the bridal suite. Just pure panic, and this desperate need to breathe air that wasn't his." "Not stupid," Ethan said firmly. "Brave." Their eyes locked, and something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, maybe. Two people who understood what it meant to be trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Two people who'd reached their breaking point and jumped. Ethan had spent a week hiding from his wealth, from the cage his success had built. Clarice had spent months trapped in an engagement that was really a hostage situation. Different prisons. Same desperation for freedom. "What now?" Clarice asked, and the vulnerability in her voice nearly undid him. "I can't go home. Can't go to friends. Vincent knows all of them. Can't go to the police because half of them are on his payroll. I have nothing, Ethan. No money, no phone, no clothes except this damn dress. I literally have nowhere to go. Ethan made a decision that would change both their lives. You come with me, he said. I have a place.
Safe.
Off the grid. You can stay there tonight, figure out your next move.
No strines. No expectations.
Just safety. Why would you do that? Clarice searched his face like she was looking for the catch, the hidden motive. You don't know me. This isn't your problem. But it is, Ethan thought. It became my problem the moment you said Vincent Stratton's name. Out loud, he said, because everyone deserves a choice. And right now, I'm offering you one. Clarice stared at him for a long moment, weighing risks, calculating odds. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay. As Ethan restarted the cab and pulled back into the empty streets, neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been following them since the plaza. Neither of them saw the man in the passenger seat lift a phone to his ear. Neither of them knew that Vincent Stratton was already 3 moves ahead, and that by sunrise, everything would change. The safe house wasn't what Clarice expected. She'd imagined something grim, a dingy apartment in a bad neighborhood, the kind of place a taxi driver could afford on tips and prayer. Instead, Ethan pulled into an underground garage beneath a luxury building in Tribeca, using a keycard that granted access to a private elevator. Some taxi driver, Clarice murmured as the elevator climbed silently toward the penthouse. Ethan's jaw tightened. I've been saving. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Clarice was too exhausted to press. Too wrung out from adrenaline and fear to care that nothing about this man added up. The way he drove like he owned the streets, the careful intelligence in his eyes, the penthouse apartment that probably cost more per month than most people made in a year. The elevator opened directly into the apartment, and Clarice's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. The space was modern, masculine, all clean lines and expensive minimalism.
Not sterile, though.
There were books stacked on the coffee table, a leather jacket thrown over a chair, a half-empty coffee mug beside a laptop on the kitchen counter. Someone lived here. Someone real. Guest rooms down the hall, Ethan said, his voice careful.
Bathroom ensuite.
I'll find you something to wear. That dress can't be comfortable. Clarice looked down at the blood-stained wedding gown, and suddenly the full weight of what she'd done crashed over her. She'd run. Actually run. Left her father bleeding, left 300 guests waiting, left her entire life behind in a moment of pure, desperate courage. And now she was standing in a stranger's penthouse, wearing the evidence of her escape, with nowhere to go and no plan beyond survive the night. I need to sit down, she whispered. Ethan was beside her instantly, his hand on her elbow, steady and warm. He guided her to the couch, and she collapsed into it, the dress pooling around her like a silk nightmare. I'm going to get you some water, Ethan said. And something to wear.
Don't move.
He disappeared down the hallway, and Clarice let her head fall back against the cushions, eyes closed. Her mind spun with fragments, her father's blood, Vincent's cold smile, the security guard's hands on her shoulders, the moment she'd kicked off her heels and run through the plaza's marble lobby in bare feet, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except escape. Here. Ethan was back, holding out a glass of water and a bundle of clothes, sweatpants, a Columbia University t-shirt, socks. They'll be too big, but better than a wedding dress covered in blood, Clarice finished. She took the clothes, their fingers brushing for the 3rd time that night. The electricity was still there, impossible to ignore. Thank you. Drop a comment if you're already suspicious of Ethan. Who is this mysterious taxi driver with a Tribeca penthouse? And don't forget to subscribe because the secrets are about to explode. She stood, swaying slightly. Ethan reached out to steady her again, and this time his hand stayed on her arm a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met, and Clarice saw something there that made her breath hitch. Concern, yes, but also something deeper. Something that looked dangerously like the way she'd been secretly hoping someone would look at her for months. Like she was a person, not a possession. Bathrooms, the second door on the left, Ethan said quietly, releasing her. Clarice nodded and fled down the hallway before she could do something stupid. Like lean into him. Like ask him to hold her while she fell apart. She'd known this man for less than an hour. She had no right to the feelings blooming in her chest. The bathroom was as luxurious as the rest of the apartment. Rainfall shower, heated floors, towels that probably cost more than her monthly car payment. Clarice caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her makeup was destroyed, black trails of mascara cutting through foundation. Her hair was a wild tangle. The blood on her dress had dried to a rust-brown stain that made her stomach turn. She stripped out of the dress mechanically, letting it fall to the floor like a shed skin. The bruises on her shoulder were already purpling, finger marks where Vincent's security guard had grabbed her. She'd have more tomorrow. Her feet were cut from running barefoot. Her wrists bore red marks from where she'd yanked free. Evidence of escape. Evidence of survival. Clarice turned on the shower as hot as she could stand and stepped under the spray, letting it wash away the blood and the fear and the feeling of Vincent's eyes on her skin. She scrubbed until her skin was red, until she was sure no trace of him remained. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than sin, she found her phone sitting on the bathroom counter. Not the burner, her actual phone. The one she'd left in the bridal suite. Her blood turned to ice. She opened the bathroom door with shaking hands. Ethan? He appeared at the end of the hallway, concern etched on his features. What's wrong? My phone. She held it up. How did you? I left it at the plaza. How is it here? Ethan's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Clarice's voice rose, panic giving way to anger. I left my phone in the bridal suite. So either you went back for it, which is impossible, or the realization hit her like a slap. Or you're not who you say you are. The silence between them stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Ethan sighed.
Get dressed.
Then we need to talk. 5 minutes later, Clarice sat on the couch in borrowed clothes that smelled like expensive detergent and him, some combination of leather and coffee, and something indefinably masculine. Her phone sat on the coffee table between them like a loaded gun. Who are you? Clarice demanded. And don't give me that taxi driver bullsh. My name is Ethan Deckard, he said quietly. I'm the CEO of Deckard Technologies. Net worth roughly $2.3 billion. And I've been driving a taxi for a week because I was tired of people only seeing my money instead of me. Clarice stared at him, then laughed, a sharp, borderline hysterical sound. Of course you're a billionaire. Because why would anything about tonight make sense? Your phone was delivered by my head of security 20 minutes ago, Ethan continued. I called him the moment we got here. Had him retrieve it from the plaza, along with your purse and anything else personal you'd left behind. Why? The question came out smaller than she intended. Because Vincent can track your phone. And I wanted to make sure he did. Clarice's blood turned cold. What? Ethan leaned forward, his eyes intense. Clarice, listen to me. Vincent Stratton isn't just your ex-fiancé. He's my business rival. Has been for 2 years. He's been systematically trying to destroy everything I've built, not because he wants my company, but because he can't stand the idea of anyone being more successful than him. I don't understand, Clarice whispered. What does that have to do with? With you? Everything. Ethan's voice was fierce. Vincent doesn't do anything without an angle. Your father's company, it's not just about the money or the merger. It's about hurting me. Liddel Imports supplies 3 of my biggest manufacturing partners. If Vincent controls your family's company, he controls my supply chain. The room spun. So, you knew? When I got in your cab, you knew who I was running from.
No.
God, no. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time that night, he looked uncertain. I didn't know about you. Didn't know Vincent was forcing you into marriage. I just knew he'd been circling your father's company. When you said his name in the cab, he met her eyes. That's when I realized this was bigger than just helping a woman in trouble. So, what am I to you? Clarice demanded, anger and hurt warring in her chest. A weapon? A way to get back at your enemy? No, the word was immediate, fierce. You're a person who deserves to be free. But Clarice, we can use this. Vincent's weakness has always been his ego. He can't stand losing. And tonight, you made him lose in front of everyone who matters in his world. He'll kill me, Clarice said flatly. You don't know what he's capable of. Yes, I do. Ethan's voice went cold. 2 years ago, a whistleblower was about to expose some of Vincent's illegal business practices. She died in a car accident 3 days before she was supposed to testify. Brakes failed. Police ruled it mechanical failure. He paused. I know exactly what Vincent's capable of, which is why we're going to destroy him before he gets another chance.
We.
Clarice's heart hammered. There is no we. I just met you. For all I know, you're as dangerous as he is. Maybe I am, Ethan admitted. But I'm the only one offering you a choice. Stay here, let me protect you, and we figure out how to take Vincent down together. Or take your phone, walk out that door, and see how long you last before his people find you. It was cruel. It was manipulative. It was also the absolute truth. Clarice looked at the phone on the table, her lifeline to the world, and also her tracking device. Looked at Ethan, this stranger who'd somehow become the only solid thing in her collapsing universe. Looked at her hands, still shaking from adrenaline and fear. If I stay, she said slowly, I'm not your weapon. I'm not your pawn in whatever game you're playing with Vincent. I'm a person, and I get a say in what happens next. Agreed, Ethan said immediately. And you tell me everything. No more secrets. No more lies about being a taxi driver who just happened to pick me up. Everything, Ethan promised. Clarice studied him for a long moment, looking for the catch, the angle, the inevitable betrayal. But all she saw was a man who'd pulled over when she was desperate, who'd driven her to safety without asking for anything in return, who looked at her like she mattered. Maybe he was using her. Maybe this was a mistake that would get her killed. But staying in Vincent's world would definitely kill her, if not her body, then her soul. Okay, Clarice said. We do this together. We take Vincent down. Ethan's smile was sharp as a blade. Together. Neither of them noticed Clarice's phone light up with a notification. Neither of them saw the message from an unknown number. Found you. And neither of them knew that Vincent Stratton was already in the building. The explosion of sound came at 2:47 a.m. Not a literal explosion, though Clarice's heart detonated in her chest with enough force that she thought she might die right there on Ethan's couch. No, this was the sharp, insistent buzzing of the apartment's security system, the red light above the elevator flashing like a warning from hell itself. Someone's trying to override the elevator, Ethan said, already moving. He crossed to a panel hidden behind a piece of abstract art, his fingers flying over a touchscreen.
4 men.
Lobby level. They'll be through in 90 seconds. Vincent, Clarice breathed. The name tasted like poison. Get to the bedroom. There's a panic room behind the closet, biometric lock, my handprint only. I'll get you inside. No, Clarice was on her feet, adrenaline burning through her veins. I'm not hiding while you face them alone. Clarice, these aren't businessmen. Vincent doesn't send negotiators at 3 in the morning. I know exactly what he sends. Her voice was steel. I lived with his threats for 8 months. But I'm done running. Their eyes locked, a clash of wills that lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Ethan nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then we do this smart. Follow my lead. He moved to the kitchen, pulling out 2 phones, one his personal cell, the other the burner. He handed Clarice the burner. Speed dial 1 is my head of security, Jackson. If anything goes wrong, you call him. He's 5 minutes out. What are you going to do? Ethan's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Remind Vincent that I don't lose. The elevator dinged. 60 seconds had become 30. Ethan grabbed his laptop from the counter, fingers dancing across keys. Security feeds. I'm looping the footage. They'll think they have the element of surprise. He pulled up another window. And I'm sending everything to my lawyers. Every second of whatever's about to happen, documented, and backed up to 3 separate servers. You think documentation will stop Vincent? Clarice's voice cracked despite her best efforts. No, Ethan met her eyes. But it'll destroy him after. If he touches you, if he even threatens you, I'll bury him so deep he'll never see daylight again. The elevator dinged again. 20 seconds. Real talk. Would you stand and fight or run? Comment below and let me know. And if your heart is racing right now, hit that subscribe button because this is only getting more intense. Ethan positioned himself between Clarice and the elevator, his body a shield. She wanted to protest, to tell him she wasn't some damsel who needed protecting. But the truth was, she was terrified. Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to clutch the burner phone with both hands to keep from dropping it. 10 seconds. Clarice, Ethan said quietly, not taking his eyes off the elevator. Whatever happens, know this. Meeting you tonight wasn't an accident. Maybe the universe has a sick sense of humor, or maybe we were always supposed to crash into each other's lives. But I don't regret it. Any of it. 5 seconds. Ethan. The elevator doors opened. 4 men in dark suits stepped into the apartment with the casual confidence of people who'd done this before. They weren't muscle, too polished, too expensive. These were Vincent's inner circle, the ones who made problems disappear. The man in front was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of face that belonged in corporate boardrooms and private clubs. He smiled when he saw Clarice, and it was worse than any threat. Miss Liddel, what a relief to find you safe. Mr. Stratton has been worried sick. Keller. Clarice recognized Vincent's chief counsel, the man who drafted the prenup, who'd explained in careful legalese exactly how trapped she would be. You need to leave.
Now.
I'm afraid that's not possible. Keller's eyes slid to Ethan, and something dangerous flickered there. Recognition. Mr. Deckard, I didn't realize you were in the business of harboring other men's fiancés. She's not his, Ethan said flatly. She ran. That makes her a free woman. Legally, the marriage contract was signed weeks ago. Tonight was merely the ceremony. Keller pulled a folded document from his jacket. Miss Liddel is bound by law to fulfill her obligations. Failure to do so results in immediate foreclosure on her father's company, seizure of all assets, and he paused, letting the threat hang. Criminal charges for breach of contract. That's not enforceable, Clarice said, but her voice wavered. You can't force someone into marriage. We're not forcing anything. Keller's smile widened. We're simply enforcing the terms Miss Liddel herself agreed to. Terms that included a very specific timeline and very specific consequences for noncompliance. Ethan stepped forward, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Get out of my home.
Now.
Before I call the police and have you arrested for breaking and entering. We didn't break anything. Keller gestured to the elevator. Your doorman was quite helpful once we explained the situation. A runaway bride, a concerned fiancé, a simple misunderstanding. You'd be amazed how cooperative people become when properly motivated. Translation. Vincent owned the doorman now. Probably owned half the building's security. Here's what's going to happen, Keller continued, his voice reasonable, almost kind. Miss Liddel is going to come with us. We'll return to the plaza, where Mr. Stratton is waiting. They'll have a private conversation, clear up this unfortunate incident, and tomorrow we'll proceed with a quiet, intimate ceremony.
No fuss.
No drama. And if I refuse? Clarice demanded. Then your father's company declares bankruptcy at 9 a.m. The 300 employees you're so concerned about? Unemployed by noon. And your father? Keller's expression was almost sympathetic. Well, the stress of losing everything he built, combined with his injuries from tonight. I'd hate to see what that might do to a man his age. Clarice felt the world tilt. This was it. The moment she'd been running from, caught up to her in a Tribeca penthouse at 3 in the morning. She could go with them, surrender to the inevitable, and maybe, save her father and his legacy. Or she could fight, and watch everything burn. She's not going anywhere. Ethan's voice cut through her spiral. He held up his laptop, turned so Keller could see the screen. Recognize this? Keller's face went white. That's right, Ethan continued. Bank records showing Vincent's payments to offshore accounts. Forged shipping manifests. Evidence of trafficking, not people, thank God, but illegal goods worth tens of millions. All documented. All ready to be sent to the FBI, the SEC, and every major media outlet in New York. He smiled. Walk out that door right now, and this stays between us. Touch her, and I burn Vincent's empire to the ground. For the first time that night, Keller looked uncertain. You're bluffing. Am I? Ethan's finger hovered over the keyboard. Want to find out? The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Clarice could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of four men's stares, could sense the axis of her entire life balancing on this single moment. Then Keller's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going from white to gray. Yes, sir. Understood. He hung up, and when he looked at Clarice again, there was something new in his eyes. Respect. Or maybe fear. Mr. Stratton would like to propose a meeting. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. To discuss terms. No terms, Ethan said. She's free, or I release everything. Mr. Stratton is prepared to forgive the debt. Release Miss Liddel from all obligations. In exchange for, Keller paused. One conversation. 30 minutes. Witnessed, recorded, completely safe. Just a chance to say goodbye properly. It was a trap. Clarice knew it with bone-deep certainty. Vincent didn't forgive, didn't release, didn't do anything that didn't serve his interests. But what choice did she have? No, Ethan said before Clarice could respond. Absolutely not. It's my decision, Clarice said quietly. She looked at Keller. Where and when? Clarice. It's my choice, Ethan. She turned to him, and the anguish in his eyes nearly broke her. You said I get a say in what happens next. This is me saying it. One conversation. 30 minutes. And then I'm free. You don't know him like I do, Ethan said desperately. He'll twist this, use it against you. Then come with me. The words were out before Clarice could stop them. Be there. Witness it. Make sure I'm safe. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Surprise, then calculation, then something that looked dangerously like hope. Noon tomorrow, Keller said. The Mandarin Oriental.
Présidentielle suite.
Mr. Deckard may attend as Miss Liddel's counsel. The pause before counsel made it clear what he really meant. Do we have an agreement? Clarice looked at Ethan. He gave the smallest shake of his head, a warning, a plea. But she'd spent 8 months letting other people make her choices. If she was going to be free, she had to choose it herself. We have an agreement, she said. Keller nodded. Noon. Don't be late. He gestured to his men, and they filed back into the elevator. As the doors closed, he added, Oh, and Miss Liddel? The wedding dress looked beautiful on you. Shame about the blood. The elevator descended, and silence crashed over the apartment like a wave. That was a mistake, Ethan said quietly. Maybe. Clarice's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch. But it was my mistake to make. Ethan sat beside her, close but not touching. He won't let you go. No matter what he promises, Vincent doesn't lose gracefully. I know. Clarice turned to look at him, this man who'd become her unlikely ally in the span of a few hours. But I also know I can't spend the rest of my life running. If I'm going to be free, really free, I have to face him. End this. One way or another. Then we end it together, Ethan said. But Clarice, when we walk into that room tomorrow, you need to be ready for anything. Vincent's going to play every card he has. And some you didn't know existed. What do you mean? Ethan's expression was grim. I mean, Vincent didn't just choose you because of your father's company. He chose you because hurting you hurts me. But you didn't even know I existed until tonight. No, Ethan agreed. But Vincent did. He's known about this connection between us before we did. And I'm willing to bet everything I own that this meeting tomorrow, it's not about letting you go. Then what's it about? Ethan met her eyes, and Clarice saw her own fear reflected back at her. It's about making us both pay for defying him. The Mandarin Oriental's presidential suite was a monument to excess. Marble floors, silk curtains, a view of Central Park that probably cost more per hour than most people earned in a week. But all Clarice could focus on was Vincent. He stood by the window, backlit by noon sun, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost $10,000. Handsome in that cold, patrician way that had once made her stomach flutter. Now, it just made her sick. Clarice. His voice was smooth as aged whiskey. I'm glad you came. Let's get this over with. She felt Ethan's presence behind her, solid, steady, a reminder that she wasn't alone. You said 30 minutes. Start talking. Vincent's eyes slid to Ethan, and something ugly flickered across his face. Deckard. I should have known you'd worm your way into this. You always did have a talent for taking what's mine. She was never yours, Ethan said coldly. Wasn't she? Vincent moved away from the window, and Clarice fought the urge to step back. Tell me, Clarice, did your knight in shining armor mention how we know each other? The real story. Business rivals, Clarice said, though unease crawled up her spine. You've been trying to destroy his company. Vincent laughed, sharp, genuine. Is that what he told you? How convenient. He poured himself a scotch from the sweets bar, taking his time. Would you like to tell her, Ethan? Or should I? There's nothing to tell, Ethan said, but Clarice heard the tension in his voice. Nothing. Vincent's smile was a shark's. Not even about Rebecca? The name hit the room like a grenade. Ethan went rigid behind her. Clarice turned to look at him, and the expression on his face, guilt, pain, fury, told her everything she needed to know. There was more to this story. Much more. Who's Rebecca? Clarice asked quietly. My sister, Vincent said. Was my sister. She died 3 years ago. He met Ethan's eyes. Courtesy of your negligence. That's a lie, Ethan said, but his voice was hollow. Is it? Vincent took a slow sip of scotch. Rebecca worked for Deckard Technologies. Junior software engineer. Brilliant mind. My baby sister. She came to you with concerns about a security flaw in your new platform, one that could expose user data to hackers. Do you remember what you told her? Silence. You told her she was overreacting, Vincent continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous. That the encryption was solid. That she should focus on her own projects and let the senior engineers handle security. He paused. 2 weeks later, that security flaw was exploited. 50 million users had their data stolen. And Rebecca, his voice cracked, just slightly. Rebecca felt responsible. Felt like she'd failed. Like she hadn't fought hard enough to make you listen. Vincent, Ethan started. She killed herself, Vincent finished. Pills and vodka in her apartment. Left a note apologizing for not being good enough. For not being smart enough to convince you. His eyes were black holes. So, you tell me, Deckard, is it really a lie? Clarice felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She looked at Ethan, desperate for him to deny it, to explain, to make it make sense. But he just stood there, pale as death. I didn't know, Ethan finally said. About Rebecca's concerns. She sent an email. It got caught in spam filters. By the time I saw it, the breach had already happened. I tried to reach her, to apologize. Too late. Vincent's voice was ice. She was already gone. And you got to keep building your empire on the backs of people you were too important to listen to. If you're feeling the weight of this revelation, drop a comment. Is Ethan responsible? Is Vincent justified? Let me know your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to get even more complicated. Asterisk, asterisk. That's why you've been destroying him, Clarice said slowly, pieces clicking into place. Not because of business. Because of revenge. Justice, Vincent corrected. I spent 2 years learning everything about Ethan Deckard. His business practices. His blind spots. His weaknesses. He smiled at Clarice. And then I found the perfect one. Clarice's blood turned to ice. What are you talking about? Vincent pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then turned it to face them. It was a photograph. Old, maybe 6, 7 years ago. A college party by the looks of it. And in the center, laughing with her arms around 2 other girls, was Clarice. Columbia University, Vincent said. Class of 2019. You graduated with honors in business administration. Impressive. He swiped to another photo. But what's more interesting is your roommate freshman year. Do you remember her? Clarice stared at the screen, her mind scrambling. The girl beside her in the photo was familiar. Brunette, bright smile, clever eyes. They'd been close that first year, before life pulled them in different directions. Sarah, Clarice whispered. Sarah Deckard, Vincent said. Ethan's younger sister. Though she went by her mother's maiden name at school, didn't want the attention that came with being a billionaire sibling. He pocketed his phone. You two were quite close, from what I understand. Best friends. Inseparable. Until you graduated and lost touch. Clarice turned to Ethan, her heart hammering. You knew. You knew who I was when I got in your cab. No. Ethan's voice was desperate. I swear to God, Clarice, I didn't recognize you. Sarah had dozens of friends at Columbia. I met maybe 3 of them. And that was 7 years ago. I didn't connect the dots until... Until when? She demanded. Until 20 minutes ago, when Vincent sent me this. Ethan pulled out his own phone, showing a text message with the same photos. He's been planning this. All of it. Planning what? Clarice looked between them, panic rising. What is this about? Vincent's smile widened. It's about the fact that 3 months after you and Sarah stopped talking, she got engaged.
To me.
He let that sink in. Rebecca wasn't my only sister, Clarice. I had 2. Rebecca, the brilliant engineer, and Sarah, the romantic who fell in love with the wrong man. The room spun. You were engaged to Sarah? For 6 months. Beautiful 6 months. Vincent's expression softened, became almost human. She was everything Rebecca wasn't. Warm, open, trusting. She loved me. Really loved me. And he paused. I was going to marry her. Build a life with her. Until your dear friend Ethan here decided to interfere. That's not what happened, Ethan said through gritted teeth.
No?
Then please, enlighten Clarice. Tell her how you convinced Sarah that I was wrong for her. How you hired private investigators to dig up dirt on my business practices. How you systematically destroyed her faith in me until she called off the engagement. Because you were abusive. Ethan's voice cracked like thunder. Sarah came to me with bruises, Vincent. With stories about your temper, your control, your jealousy. I didn't have to convince her of anything. I just gave her the courage to leave. Lies. Vincent's mask slipped, revealing something feral beneath. Sarah was confused. Your investigators fed her propaganda. You poisoned her against me because you couldn't stand the idea of your baby sister with someone you couldn't control. She was terrified of you, Ethan shot back. She changed her phone number, moved to Seattle, started over completely just to get away from you. That's not a woman who was confused. That's a woman who escaped. Vincent's hand tightened on his glass. For a moment, Clarice thought he might throw it. Then he set it down carefully, deliberately. Sarah's in Seattle, he said quietly. Safe.
Happy.
Or at least she was. His eyes locked on Clarice. Until I sent someone to remind her that some debts never expire. The threat was clear as crystal. You touch my sister, Ethan said, his voice deadly calm. And I will end you. Will you? Vincent pulled out a tablet, brought up a video feed. Because right now my associate is having coffee at Sarah's favorite cafe. Table directly behind her. One text from me, and Sarah has the same accident Rebecca did. Tragic. Preventable. Entirely your fault. Clarice watched the blood drain from Ethan's face. Watched him transform from confident billionaire to terrified brother in the space of a heartbeat. This was Vincent's real play. Not the business rivalry. Not even revenge for Rebecca. This was about breaking Ethan Deckard completely. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent said, his voice smooth again. Clarice is going to marry me.
Today.
Right here in this suite. I have a judge waiting. We'll sign the papers, take the photos, and everyone goes home happy. And if I refuse? Clarice asked, though she already knew. Then Ethan's sister dies. Your father's company collapses. And I release evidence, fabricated but convincing, that Ethan Deckard was directly responsible for Rebecca's death. His reputation, his company, everything he's built, gone. Vincent smiled. Or you can put on a dress, say I do, and everyone you care about stays safe. Your choice. The room was silent except for the tick of an antique clock on the mantel. Clarice looked at Ethan and saw her own desperation reflected back at her. They were trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. Vincent had engineered this moment perfectly, every angle covered, every escape route blocked. There has to be another way, Ethan said hoarsely. There isn't. Vincent checked his watch. You have 10 minutes to decide. After that, my associate gets his instructions. Clarice's mind raced. She could agree, sacrifice herself to save Ethan's sister and her father. Or she could refuse and live with the blood on her hands when Vincent made good on his threats. Some choice. She opened her mouth to accept, to surrender, to save everyone but herself, when Ethan grabbed her hand. Wait, he said. Vincent, there's something you don't know. Vincent raised an eyebrow. I doubt that. Clarice and I. Ethan's grip tightened. We're already married. The lie hung in the air like smoke. Vincent's expression froze. What? Last night. Vegas. Ethan pulled Clarice closer, his body language shifting to something protective, possessive. After she ran from you, we flew to Nevada. Got married at 3 a.m. It's legal, binding, and very much real. It was a desperate bluff. A Hail Mary that would either save them or destroy them. Vincent stared at them for a long moment. Then he started to laugh.
Prove it, he said.
And Clarice realized with sinking horror that they couldn't. Because it was a lie. And Vincent knew it. We don't have to prove anything to you, Ethan said, but Clarice heard the edge of desperation in his voice. Vincent's laughter died, replaced by something colder. No marriage license.
No witnesses.
No photos. He pulled out his phone. And according to my contact at the Clark County Clerk's office in Vegas, who I just texted, there's no record of any marriage between Clarice Liddel and Ethan Deckard filed in the last 72 hours. The bluff had failed. Ethan's hand was still wrapped around Clarice's, his palms slick with sweat. She could feel his pulse racing, matching her own panicked rhythm. So, let's try this again, Vincent said, his voice dropping to something silky and dangerous. Clarice, are you going to marry me? Or do I make that phone call? Clarice's voice cracked. She looked at Ethan, saw the anguish in his eyes, the impossible choice written across his face. His sister's life. Her father's legacy. Everything balanced on her answer. There was only one thing she could say. Yes. The word tasted like ash. I'll marry you. No, Ethan's grip tightened. Clarice, you can't. It's done, she said, pulling her hand free. The loss of his warmth felt like death. I'll marry you, Vincent, but I have conditions. Vincent's smile was triumphant. You're in no position to negotiate. Aren't I? Clarice forced steel into her voice, even as her heart shattered. You want a wife who'll smile for photos and play the perfect society bride? Then you leave Ethan alone. No more attacks on his company.
No touching Sarah.
You let him go, completely and forever. And your father's company? Vincent asked. You forgive the debt. Release all claims. Let him keep his business. Generous terms. Vincent studied her like a scientist examining a specimen. What do I get besides a reluctant bride? You get to win. Clarice met his eyes, refusing to flinch. Isn't that what this was always about? Beating Ethan? You want to prove you can take everything he cares about? Then take me. But leave everyone else alone. The silence stretched like a blade. Deal, Vincent finally said. We marry today. You play the devoted wife. And everyone you love stays safe. He checked his watch. The judge will be here in an hour. I suggest you make yourself presentable. There's a dress waiting in the bedroom. Of course there was. Vincent had planned every detail. Clarice turned to leave, but Ethan caught her arm. "Don't do this," he said quietly, urgently.
Please.
"We'll find another way." "There is no other way." Clarice forced herself to meet his eyes, to memorize the exact shade of brown, the flecks of gold, the pain she was causing. "This is the only way everyone survives." "What about you?" His voice broke. "What about your survival?" "I've been surviving, Vincent, for 8 months." The lie came easier than she expected. "What's a lifetime?" She pulled away before he could see the tears, walking toward the bedroom with her spine straight and her heart in pieces. The dress was ivory, not white, because Vincent understood symbolism. Fitted lace, demure neckline, the kind of thing a proper society wife would wear for a private ceremony. It probably cost more than Clarice's car. She stared at it hanging on the closet door and wanted to set it on fire. Instead, she put it on. Her hands shook so badly she could barely manage the zipper. Through the closed door, she could hear Vincent on the phone, arranging details, issuing orders. Ethan's voice was conspicuously absent. Maybe Vincent had made him leave. Maybe Ethan had left on his own, unwilling to watch her sacrifice herself. She couldn't decide which possibility hurt more. Real talk, Clarice is making an impossible choice. Would you do the same to save the people you love? Drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe because you need to see how this ends. Clarice was adjusting the dress when she heard it, a soft sound from the suite's second bedroom.
Movement.
Someone who shouldn't be there. She froze, heart hammering. Vincent's security. Another trap? The door cracked open. "Don't scream," Ethan whispered. He slipped inside, closing the door silently behind him. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, tie loose, eyes wild with something between desperation and determination. "What are you doing?" Clarice hissed. "If Vincent finds you, I don't care." Ethan crossed to her in 3 strides. "Clarice, listen to me. I've been on the phone with my security team. We can get you out.
Right now.
There's a service elevator, a car waiting." "And then what?" Clarice's voice was harsh. "Vincent calls whoever's watching Sarah. Your sister dies. My father loses everything. And we spend the rest of our lives running." She shook her head.
No.
"This is the only way." "It's not." Ethan grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "There's always another way. We can fight him."
Together.
"We can." "We met 12 hours ago," Clarice said, and the words were cruel, deliberately cutting. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. This isn't your fight." "The hell it isn't." His grip tightened. "You think I can just walk away? Knowing you're trapped with that monster? Knowing that every day you're married to him is a day he's hurting you? You'll forget about me." Clarice pulled free, putting distance between them before she did something stupid. Like lean into him. Like beg him to save her. "In a week, a month, I'll just be another woman who passed through your life." "Is that what you think?" Ethan's laugh was bitter. "That you're just another woman? Clarice, in 12 hours you've become." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "God, this is insane. I barely know you, but I know that letting you marry Vincent is wrong. I know that every instinct I have is screaming at me to grab you and run and damn the consequences." "Your sister is smart and capable and has security of her own," Ethan interrupted. "I called her, warned her. She's at a safe house right now, surrounded by my best people." "Vincent's guy in Seattle? Already detained by local police on harassment charges." Clarice's heart stuttered. "What?" "I wasn't bluffing about having evidence on Vincent. I've been building a case for 2 years. The moment Vincent threatened Sarah, I made a call. The FBI is executing search warrants on his properties right now." Ethan's smile was sharp. "Vincent thinks he's won. But he's about to learn what happens when you threaten a Deckard." Hope bloomed in Clarice's chest. Dangerous, terrifying hope. "My father is being moved to a secure location as we speak, along with documentation transferring his company's debt to a clean holding company I control. Vincent can't touch him. But the contract is unenforceable." coercion, duress, and a dozen other legal violations. Ethan stepped closer. Clarice, you're free.
Right now.
You just have to walk out that door with me. She wanted to. God, she wanted to so badly. It physically hurt. But years of caution, months of Vincent's manipulation, held her back. What if you're wrong? She whispered. What if Vincent has contingencies? What if? The bedroom door exploded inward. Vincent stood in the doorway, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him were 3 security guards, not the polished lawyers from last night, but actual muscle. Men who looked like they broke bones for a living. Touching, Vincent said. Really very romantic. But I'm afraid the happy ending will have to wait. He'd heard everything. Known Ethan was here. Let them have their moment of hope just so he could crush it. The FBI will be here any minute, Ethan said, positioning himself between Vincent and Clarice. It's over. Is it? Vincent pulled out his phone, showed them a video feed. That's the lobby. Notice anything interesting? The men in suits? Those aren't FBI agents. They're mine. I own this hotel, Deckard. You really think I'd arrange a meeting on ground I didn't control? Clarice's hope shattered like glass. As for the FBI, yes, they're executing warrants. On empty properties filled with fake evidence that will lead nowhere. Did you really think I kept my real operations somewhere you could find them? Vincent's smile was a blade. I've been 3 steps ahead of you this entire time. Sarah
Is fine.
for now. But Clarice's father? Vincent's expression darkened. He just had an unfortunate relapse. Seems the stress was too much for his heart. He's in the ICU at Mount Sinai. 50-50 chance he makes it through the night. No, the word ripped from Clarice's throat. You said if I married you.
Elite.
Vincent shrugged. Shocking, I know. But here's the truth. I don't want a wife who loves me. I want a wife who's broken. Who knows that every person she cares about lives or dies at my whim. And you, he turned to Ethan. I want you to watch her break. To know that you couldn't save her. That for all your money and power, you're as helpless as I was when Rebecca died. The guards moved forward. Don't touch her, Ethan warned, but there were 3 of them and 1 of him. It was over in seconds. They had Ethan's arms pinned, a gun pressed to his ribs. Take him downstairs, Vincent ordered. Make sure he has a good view of the ceremony. I want him to see every moment. Vincent, please. Clarice started. The judge is here. Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless. Put on some lipstick.
Smile.
And remember, every tear you shed, every moment of resistance, is another person who pays the price. They dragged Ethan toward the door. He fought, but the gun in his ribs kept him from doing anything that might get him killed. Clarice, he called out, desperation raw in his voice. I will find a way. I swear to God, I will. The door slammed shut, cutting him off. And Clarice was alone with the man who'd just destroyed every hope she had left. Vincent studied her with cold satisfaction. You have 5 minutes to compose yourself. Then we're getting married. And tomorrow, his smile widened. Tomorrow, you're going to call Ethan and tell him you're happy. That you chose this. That you never want to see him again. And he's going to believe you because you're going to be very, very convincing. I won't, Clarice said, but her voice was hollow. You will. Vincent moved closer, and she forced herself not to flinch. Because if you don't, Ethan Deckard dies. Not quickly. Not cleanly. But in a way that looks like suicide, just like Rebecca. Tragic. Poetic. His fault for falling for the wrong woman. He left her standing in the ivory dress that felt like a shroud. Outside, the city hummed with life. People living, loving, free. And Clarice had never felt more trapped in her entire life. The darkest hour had arrived, and she couldn't see any light ahead. The judge was a small man with nervous hands and eyes that wouldn't meet Clarice's. Vincent had bought him or threatened him, more likely. It didn't matter. He was here, contract in hand, ready to seal her fate. Clarice stood in the center of the presidential suite, the ivory dress feeling like chains. Through the window, she could see Central Park, people jogging, couples walking, the world continuing as if hers wasn't ending. Vincent stood beside her, immaculate in his suit, his hand on her lower back. Possessive. Proprietary. The touch made her skin crawl. "Shall we begin?" the judge asked, his voice reedy. "One moment," Vincent said. He gestured to the corner, where Ethan sat in a chair, held there by two guards. "I want him to see this clearly." Ethan's eyes met Clarice's across the room. There was fury there and anguish, but also something else. Something that looked like calculation. He gave the slightest shake of his head. "A warning? A message?" "Mr. Stratton," the judge continued, "if you're ready." Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and for the first time that day, his composure cracked. Just slightly, a tightening around his eyes, a pale cast to his skin. "Excuse me," he said, stepping away. "Business." He moved to the window, phone pressed to his ear. Clarice couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw his body language shift, from confident to tense to something that looked almost like panic. In the corner, Ethan caught her eye again. This time, he mouthed two words, "Trust me." Before Clarice could process that, the suite's main door burst open. A woman strode in, late 20s, dark hair, with Ethan's eyes and Vincent's worst nightmare written across her face. "Sarah?" Clarice breathed. "Sorry I'm late," Sarah Deckard said, her voice carrying across the room. "Traffic was hell." She looked at Vincent, and her smile was pure poison. "Hello, Vincent. Miss me?" Vincent went white. Actually white. "You're supposed to be in Seattle? Being threatened by your hired thug." Sarah laughed. "See, that's where you made your mistake. You assumed I was still the scared 23-year-old who ran from you. But I've spent 3 years learning exactly how dangerous men like you operate." She pulled out a tablet. "Want to see what I found?" "Get her out of here," Vincent snapped at his guards. But they didn't move, because standing behind Sarah were 4 people in FBI windbreakers, weapons drawn. "Vincent Stratton," one of them said, "you're under arrest for trafficking in stolen goods, wire fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit murder." The room exploded into chaos. Vincent lunged for Clarice. Whether to use her as a hostage or simply to hurt her, she'd never know, because Ethan was suddenly there, free from the guards who'd been holding him. He crashed into Vincent with the force of a freight train, and they went down in a tangle of expensive suits and raw fury. "Clarice, get back," Sarah yelled, pulling her away from the fight. The FBI agents moved in, separating Ethan and Vincent. It took 3 of them to restrain Vincent, who was screaming threats, promises of revenge, legal threats that meant nothing anymore. "It's over," one of the agents said, snapping handcuffs on Vincent's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." "You can't do this." Vincent's mask was completely gone now, revealing the monster beneath. "I own judges. Senators. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually, we do." Sarah held up her tablet. "See, while you were busy playing puppet master, I was working with the FBI. Turns out your offshore accounts? Not as hidden as you thought. Your trafficking operation? We've been monitoring it for 8 months. And Rebecca," her voice hardened, "my sister didn't kill herself because she felt guilty. She killed herself because you threatened to destroy her career if she reported the security flaw. She left a second note. One you didn't know about. One that detailed everything." Vincent's face went from white to gray. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Sarah pulled up a scanned image, Rebecca's handwriting, describing Vincent's threats in careful detail. She gave it to her therapist 2 days before she died, along with emails, text messages, recorded phone calls. Everything. If you're cheering right now, drop a comment. Let me know how you're feeling. And make sure you're subscribed, because we're racing toward the ending and you do not want to miss this. The FBI agents hauled Vincent toward the door. He fought every step, his eyes locked on Clarice with such hatred that she actually stepped back. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You think you've won? I'll be out in 24 hours. My lawyers will tear you apart. And when I am free, you won't be." Ethan's voice cut through Vincent's rant, cold and final. Sarah's evidence? That's just the opening salvo. I've spent 2 years building a case against you. Every illegal deal, every bribed official, every threat and extortion. It's all documented, all admissible, and all being delivered to every relevant authority right now. Vincent's struggle stilled. You're bluffing. Am I? Ethan pulled out his own phone. Your chief counsel, Keller? He's been cooperating with the FBI for 6 months. Immunity deal in exchange for testimony. He's already given them everything, including your plans for Clarice's father. Speaking of, Sarah interjected, Mr. Liddel is fine.
He's not in the ICU.
He's at Mount Sinai, yes, but in a private suite, recovering nicely from his injuries. The heart attack was a lie, just like everything else Vincent told you. Clarice's knees went weak. My father's okay? More than okay, Sarah said gently. He's been helping us build the case. Once he learned what Vincent was really planning, not just forcing you into marriage, but stealing his company through fraud, he decided to fight back. The FBI agents dragged Vincent toward the elevator. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. You deserve each other, he spat at Ethan and Clarice. 2 liars playing dress-up as heroes. You think this is a happy ending? It's not. You'll destroy each other. People like us always do. Then the elevator doors closed, and he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Clarice stood in the center of the suite, still wearing the ivory dress, her mind struggling to catch up with what had just happened. Not married. Vincent arrested. Her father safe. It was over. It was actually over. How? She finally managed, looking between Ethan and Sarah. How did you? The moment you agreed to marry him, I knew we had to move fast, Ethan said. He moved toward her carefully, like she might bolt. I texted Sarah while you were in the bedroom. She was already on a plane from Seattle, had been since last night, actually. You knew Vincent would make his move?
Clarice asked.
I suspected. Sarah came to stand beside her brother. Vincent's predictable when he's obsessed. And he's been obsessed with destroying Ethan for 3 years. When I heard about you, about a woman being forced into marriage with him, I knew we had our chance. Chance for what? To make him overconfident, Ethan explained. Vincent's weakness has always been his ego. He can't resist showing off, proving he's the smartest person in the room. So we gave him what he wanted, a setup that looked like he'd won. And while he was gloating, Sarah was coordinating with the FBI. Clarice looked at Sarah. Really looked at her. The girl in the college photos had been soft, uncertain. This woman was steel-wrapped in silk. You did this for me?
Clarice asked.
But we barely knew each other. It's been 7 years. You were kind to me, Sarah said simply. Freshman year, when I was drowning in expectations and fear, you were the one person who treated me like a regular human being. Not a billionaire sister. Not a political pawn.
Just
Sarah. She smiled. I don't forget that. And when Ethan told me Vincent was doing to you what he tried to do to me, there was no way I wasn't going to help. Tears burned in Clarice's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll get out of that dress, Sarah suggested. Because seeing you in Vincent's chosen outfit is making me irrationally angry. Clarice laughed, a sound somewhere between hysteria and relief. I need to see my father. I'll take you, Ethan said immediately. My car's downstairs. We can. Actually, Sarah interrupted, glancing at her phone. Dad's asking for updates. I should handle that. And the FBI will want statements from both of you. She looked between them meaningfully. Which gives you maybe an hour before the chaos starts. I suggest you use it. Use it for what? Clarice asked. Sarah just smiled. I think you'll figure it out. She headed for the elevator, then paused. Clarice? I'm really glad you ran into that taxi. Even if my brother was pretending to be someone else. The elevator doors closed on her knowing look. And suddenly, Clarice and Ethan were alone. The suite felt different now, lighter, somehow. The oppressive weight of Vincent's presence was gone, replaced by something tentative and fragile and terrifying. You saved me, Clarice said quietly. You and Sarah. You saved me. You saved yourself, Ethan corrected. You were the one who ran. The one who refused to give up. We just helped. By lying about being a taxi driver? About that. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable for the first time since she'd met him. I know I should have told you the truth earlier, but I was trying to remember what it felt like to be normal, Clarice finished. To be seen as a person, not a bank account. I understand that now. They stood facing each other, 3 feet apart, an ocean of unspoken feelings between them. 12 hours, Ethan said softly. I've known you for 12 hours. That's insane, right? You don't fall for someone in 12 hours. You don't risk everything for a stranger, Clarice agreed. You don't stand between them and a monster. You don't. Clarice leaned into his touch, letting herself have this moment. This hope.
Kiss me, she said.
Before I lose my nerve. Before reality sets in. Just kiss me. Ethan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Yes, ma'am. And when his lips met hers, Clarice finally understood what freedom tasted like. 3 weeks later, Clarice stood in the lobby of Deckard Technologies, staring up at the steel and glass tower that represented everything Ethan had built. Everything Vincent had tried to destroy. You ready for this? Ethan asked beside her. Clarice adjusted the blazer Sarah had insisted she borrow, charcoal gray, professional, the armor of a woman who knew her worth. As ready as I'll ever be. Today was the final board meeting. The one where they'd present the evidence that would permanently dismantle Vincent's empire. Where justice would finally fully be served. But that wasn't why Clarice's hands were shaking. Ethan's fingers found hers, squeezing gently. He can't hurt you anymore. You know that, right? I know.
And she did.
Vincent was in federal custody, denied bail after prosecutors presented evidence he'd been planning to flee the country. His assets were frozen. His associates were turning on him faster than rats, leaving a sinking ship. But knowing and feeling are different things. Then feel this, Ethan said, turning her to face him. Right there in the lobby, with his employees streaming past, he pulled her close. You're safe. You're free. And you're about to watch a monster get exactly what he deserves. Clarice leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. 3 weeks since that night at the Mandarin Oriental. 3 weeks of FBI interviews, legal proceedings, and slowly learning to breathe without looking over her shoulder. 3 weeks of falling impossibly, irrevocably in love with a man who'd started as a stranger in a cab. Ms. Liddel? A woman in a crisp suit approached them. The board is ready for you. This was it. The boardroom was packed, not just with Deckard Technologies board members, but with federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and representatives from every company Vincent had victimized over the years. At the head of the table sat Judge Martinez, appointed to oversee the dissolution of Vincent's assets. And on a video screen mounted on the wall, in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, was Vincent himself. Clarice's breath caught. Even through a screen, even imprisoned and defeated, Vincent's eyes still held that cold calculation. That absolute certainty that he'd find a way to win. Mr. Stratton, Judge Martinez began, you're here to witness the final disposition of your corporate holdings. After a thorough investigation, this board has determined that Stratton Enterprises was built on fraud, extortion, and racketeering. All assets will be seized and distributed to victims of your crimes. Vincent's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Additionally, the prosecutor spoke up. We've discovered evidence of your involvement in the death of Rebecca Deckard. While the original ruling stated suicide, new evidence, including testimony from your former head of security, confirms you orchestrated a campaign of harassment and threats that directly led to her death. You're being charged with involuntary manslaughter, along with the existing charges. For the first time, Vincent's mask cracked. That's a lie. Rebecca was unstable. Rebecca was brilliant and kind. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a blade. She stood at the opposite end of the table, flanked by her lawyers. And you destroyed her because she threatened to expose your crimes. But you made one mistake. What's that? Vincent sneered. You underestimated how much people loved her. How many people kept records, saved emails, documented everything. Sarah pulled up a presentation on the screen beside Vincent's feed. These are testimonies from 15 different employees who witnessed your harassment of Rebecca. These are emails where you explicitly threatened her career. These are phone records showing you called her 47 times in the week before her death. Vincent's face went pale. And this, Sarah continued, her voice breaking slightly, is the second suicide note. The one she left with her therapist. The one where she names you specifically as the reason she couldn't see a way out. The room fell silent as Sarah read Rebecca's words, a heartbreaking account of a young woman broken by a powerful man's cruelty. By the end, there were tears on more than one face. Vincent said nothing. For once in his life, he had no defense, no angle, no way to twist the truth. Based on this evidence, Judge Martinez said, "I'm recommending the prosecution pursue maximum sentences on all counts. Mr. Stratton, you're looking at 25 to 40 years in federal prison." If this feels like justice to you, drop a comment below. And make sure you're subscribed because we're almost at the ending and you won't want to miss how Clarice and Ethan's story concludes. Vincent's eyes found Clarice across the video connection. "This is your fault," he said quietly. "All of this. If you'd just been a good girl and married me, then I'd be dead," Clarice interrupted. She stood, walking toward the screen. "Or broken. Or both. But instead, I'm here. I'm free. And I'm about to watch you lose everything you've ever valued. You think you've won?" Vincent's voice was desperate now, the facade completely shattered. "You think Deckard loves you? He's using you, just like I would have. Men like us don't love. We acquire." "You're right about one thing," Ethan said, standing beside Clarice. "You and I are nothing alike. Because I don't see Clarice as something to own. I see her as the person who made me remember what it feels like to be human." He wrapped an arm around her waist. "And unlike you, I know the difference between love and possession." Vincent's laugh was hollow. "How touching. Enjoy it while it lasts." Because people like her, he focused on Clarice. "Always leave. Always disappoint. You'll see." "No," Clarice said firmly. "You'll see. You'll see me build a life with people who actually care about me. You'll see my father's company thrive without your poison. You'll see Ethan and Sarah heal from what you did to Rebecca. And you'll know that despite everything you did, we survived. We won." Judge Martinez banged her gavel. "This hearing is concluded. Mr. Stratton, you'll be transferred to a federal facility pending trial." All parties dismissed. The video feed cut out, and Vincent's face disappeared. The room erupted in controlled chaos. Lawyers conferring, board members congratulating each other, prosecutors packing up evidence. But Clarice just stood there, staring at the blank screen where Vincent had been. "It's really over," she whispered. "It's really over," Ethan confirmed. He turned her to face him. "So, what do you want to do now? You could work with your father, rebuild Liddel Imports, or pursue your own path. Or," he paused, looking uncertain for the first time in weeks, "or you could stay here. With me. Help me build something better than what came before." Clarice's heart stuttered. "Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a choice." Ethan's hands came up to cup her face. "No pressure.
No expectations.
Just possibilities." Before Clarice could answer, Sarah appeared at her elbow. "Sorry to interrupt, but Clarice? There's someone here to see you." Clarice turned, and her breath caught. Her father stood in the doorway, looking healthier than he had in months. The bruises from that night had faded. The worry lines around his eyes had softened. He looked like the man she remembered from childhood, strong, proud, whole. "Daddy," she breathed, and then she was running across the boardroom, throwing herself into his arms. "My brave girl," he murmured into her hair. "My incredible, brave girl. I'm so proud of you."
I'm sorry, Clarice sobbed.
"I'm sorry I couldn't save the company. I'm sorry I—" "Save it." Her father pulled back, holding her at arm's length. "Clarice, you saved everything that matters. You saved your life, your freedom, your future." He glanced at Ethan. "And from what Mr. Deckard tells me, you've got quite a future ahead of you." "What do you mean?" Her father smiled. Mr. Deckard has made me a very generous offer. He wants to merge Liddel Imports with Deckard Technologies, Supply Chain Division. Equal partnership. Your name on the letterhead. He looked at her seriously. But only if you want it. This is your choice, Clarice. Not mine. Not his. Yours. Clarice looked between her father and Ethan, her mind racing. A partnership. A future. A chance to build something new from the ashes of what Vincent had tried to destroy. But more than that, a choice. Real choice. The thing she'd been denied for so long. I want it, she said. But on one condition. Name it, Ethan said immediately. We create a foundation. In Rebecca's name. To support young professionals facing workplace harassment or retaliation for reporting misconduct. Clarice looked at Sarah. If that's okay with you. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Rebecca would have loved that. Then we have a deal, Ethan said, extending his hand. Clarice took it, but instead of shaking, she pulled him close. We have more than a deal, she whispered. We have a future. And right there, in front of the board and the lawyers and her father and Sarah, Ethan kissed her. Not the desperate kiss from the Mandarin Oriental that had been about survival, about grabbing onto something solid in a world turned upside down. This kiss was about promise, about possibility, about two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and decided to walk into the light together. When they finally pulled apart, the room burst into applause. So, Sarah said, grinning, should we talk about how Ethan was pretending to be a taxi driver? Because I have thoughts. No, Ethan and Clarice said in unison, and everyone laughed. That evening, Clarice stood on the balcony of Ethan's penthouse. Their penthouse now, he'd insisted, watching the sun set over the Hudson River. The city sparkled below, full of life and possibility. She heard the door open, felt Ethan's arms wrap around her from behind. Penny for your thoughts? He murmured. I was thinking about that night, Clarice said. When I jumped into your cab in a blood-stained wedding dress, crying and desperate. If someone had told me then that 3 weeks later I'd be here, with you, planning a future I actually want, she shook her head. I wouldn't have believed it. Believe it, Ethan said. Because this is real. You're real. We're real. Clarice turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved her. Not because he was a billionaire with resources, but because he'd seen her as a person worth saving. I love you, she said. The words came easily now. I know it's fast. I know people will say we're crazy. But I love you, Ethan Deckard. His smile could have lit the city. I love you too, Clarice Liddel. And I don't care if it's fast. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you least expect them. Like picking up a runaway bride in a taxi? Exactly like that. As the sun disappeared below the horizon and the city lights flickered to life, Clarice leaned into Ethan's embrace and felt something she hadn't felt in almost a year. Safe. Free. Home. The nightmare was over. And the dream was just beginning. 6 months later, the Rebecca Deckard Foundation's grand opening was everything Sarah had dreamed it would be, elegant without being ostentatious, purposeful without being preachy. The renovated brownstone in Chelsea hummed with voices, hope, and the kind of energy that came from building something meaningful. Clarice stood in the center of the main room, watching as young professionals mingled with corporate leaders, legal advocates, and survivors who'd found the courage to come forward with their own stories. On the walls hung photos of Rebecca, not just the polished corporate headshots, but candid moments. Rebecca laughing. Rebecca coding late at night, surrounded by empty coffee cups. Rebecca being gloriously, messily human. She would have loved this, Sarah said, appearing at Clarice's side with 2 glasses of champagne. Thank you for pushing to make this happen. It was always going to happen, Clarice said, accepting the glass. Rebecca deserved to be remembered for who she was, not how she died. Sarah's eyes glistened. You know, when Ethan first told me about you, about the woman in the wedding dress who jumped into his cab, I thought he was having some kind of breakdown. My sensible, logical brother, falling for someone he'd just met. She laughed. But then I saw you two together and I understood. You're not just good for him, Clarice. You're good with him. There's a difference. Before Clarice could respond, a commotion near the entrance made them turn. A woman had just arrived, late 50s, elegant in a way that spoke of old money and quiet power. She looked around the room with an expression caught somewhere between grief and wonder. That's Dr. Patricia Henley, Sarah breathed. Rebecca's therapist. The one who kept the second note. I invited her, but I didn't think she'd come. Dr. Henley's eyes found Sarah across the room, and something passed between them. Understanding, shared loss, and perhaps a measure of peace. She made her way through the crowd slowly, stopping to read the information panels about workplace harassment, resources for victims, legal support networks. When she finally reached them, her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. Ms. Deckard. Ms. Liddel. She extended her hand. Thank you for this. Rebecca spoke of you often, Sarah. She loved you very much. Not enough to let me help her, Sarah said, her voice cracking despite her composure. Depression and trauma don't work that way, Dr. Henley said gently. Rebecca knew you loved her. But Vincent Stratton was very good at making people feel trapped, at convincing them there was no way out. She looked around the room. This, what you've built here, this is how we make sure others don't feel that same hopelessness. This is how we win. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to start over and build something new from the ashes? I'd love to hear your story. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button. Across the room, Clarice spotted Ethan deep in conversation with her father. The two men had developed an unlikely friendship over the past 6 months, bonding over business strategy, terrible golf games, and a shared determination to protect the woman they both loved. As if sensing her gaze, Ethan looked up and smiled. That smile that was just for her. The one that still made her heart skip. 6 months of waking up beside him. 6 months of learning his quirks. How he was grumpy before his first coffee. How he talked to his computer when code wasn't working. How he still kept the taxi in a garage downtown because you never know when you might need to remember who you really are. 6 months of building Liddel Deckard Supply Solutions from the ground up. Of proving that her business degree wasn't just decoration, that she had her father's head for logistics and her own talent for innovation. 6 months of healing. Of therapy sessions where she unpacked 8 months of Vincent's manipulation. Of slowly learning to trust her own judgment again. Of discovering that love didn't have to hurt, control didn't have to be disguised as care, and freedom was something you claimed, not something someone granted you. Speech time, Sarah whispered, nudging her toward the small stage at the front of the room. Clarice's stomach flipped. Public speaking had never been her strength. But this wasn't just any speech. This was the reason they were all here. She made her way to the microphone, and the room gradually quieted. Faces turned toward her, some curious, some supportive, all waiting. 6 months ago, Clarice began, her voice steadier than she felt. I was standing in a hotel suite wearing a wedding dress I didn't choose, about to marry a man I feared, because I thought I had no other option. I thought that sacrificing my happiness was the price of protecting people I loved. She paused, finding Ethan in the crowd. And then a stranger became my salvation. Not because he was rich or powerful, though he is both, but because he saw me as a person worth saving. She saw people nodding, recognizing their own stories and hers. But here's what I learned. I didn't need saving. I needed support. I needed resources. I needed people who believed me when I said I was in danger. And most of all, I needed to believe in myself, in my right to choose my own path, even when that path was terrifying. Clarice looked at Sarah, at Dr. Henley, at the survivors scattered throughout the room. Rebecca Deckard tried to do the right thing. She saw corruption and spoke up. She identified a security flaw and reported it. She did everything we're told to do when we encounter wrongdoing in the workplace. Her voice hardened, and she was punished for it, harassed, threatened, broken down until she couldn't see a way forward. The Rebecca Deckard Foundation exists to make sure that never happens again. We provide legal support for whistleblowers. mental health resources for those facing workplace retaliation, financial assistance for people who need to escape toxic situations. And most importantly, she felt tears threatening but pushed through. We provide community. A place where survivors can say, "This happened to me," and hear back, "We believe you, and we're going to help." The room erupted in applause. Clarice saw her father wiping his eyes, saw Sarah openly crying, saw Ethan looking at her with such pride and love that her heart felt too big for her chest. So tonight, we celebrate Rebecca's memory by committing to protect others. We honor her courage by giving people the resources she didn't have. And we ensure that her story, tragic as it is, becomes a catalyst for change rather than just another statistic. Clarice raised her champagne glass. To Rebecca. To survivors. To the courage it takes to say no more. And to the future we're building together. To Rebecca, the room echoed, glasses raised. As Clarice stepped off the stage, Ethan was there to catch her, pulling her into his arms. "That was perfect," he murmured into her hair. "I was terrified." "I know. That's what made it brave." He pulled back to look at her. "You know what today is?" Clarice thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. 6 months. Since that night. Since you jumped into my cab and changed my entire life. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket, and Clarice's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait. Do this somewhere private, somewhere romantic. But then I realized this is us. Surrounded by people fighting for something better. Building something meaningful from tragedy. So..." He dropped to one knee right there, in the middle of the Rebecca Deckard Foundation, with 100 people watching. "Clarice Liddel, you are the bravest, most remarkable person I've ever met. You've taught me that love isn't about possession or control. It's about partnership and trust and choosing each other every single day. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the light and scattered it like promises. "Will you marry me?"
For real this time.
"Not out of obligation or fear, but because we choose this. Because we choose us." The room had gone completely silent. Clarice looked at Ethan, at the man who'd been willing to risk everything for a stranger in a blood-stained wedding dress, who'd shown her that vulnerability wasn't weakness, and that love could be safe and fierce and real. "Yes," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Yes to choosing us. Yes to building a future together. Yes to everything." Ethan slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like coming home. The room exploded into cheers, applause, and more than a few happy tears. When they finally broke apart, Sarah was beside them, grinning through her tears. "So I guess I'm planning a wedding," she said. "But can we please do it without any running or bloodstains this time?" "Deal," Clarice laughed. Her father appeared, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered. "You turned a nightmare into purpose. Tragedy into hope. That takes a special kind of strength, sweetheart. I learned it from you, Daddy." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, celebration, and the kind of joy that felt earned. As the crowd thinned and the staff began cleaning up, Clarice found herself back on the balcony. Not unlike that first night in Ethan's penthouse, but everything had changed. Ethan joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That's 6 months ago. I was running from a nightmare. And now I'm standing in the middle of a dream I didn't even know I was allowed to have." She turned in his arms. "Thank you. For stopping that night. For taking a chance on a crazy woman in a wedding dress. Thank you for jumping into my cab." Ethan's smile was soft. "Best fare I ever picked up." "You didn't charge me." "No," he agreed. "But you gave me something worth infinitely more, a reason to be real again. A reminder that the best things in life can't be bought or controlled. They can only be chosen." Clarice kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. Below them, the city sparkled. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of moments of choice that determined destinies. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, terrified, trapped, convinced she had no options. And she thought about the woman she was now, strong, free, building a life she actually wanted. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been nightmares, therapy sessions where she'd sobbed for hours, moments where the weight of everything threatened to crush her. But she'd survived. More than survived, she'd thrived. And tomorrow, she'd wake up beside the man she loved. She'd go to work at a company she'd helped build. She'd continue supporting others through the foundation that bore Rebecca's name. She'd live the life she'd chosen, not the one forced upon her. "I love you, Ethan Deckard," she said. "My fake taxi driver. My real partner. My choice." "I love you, Clarice Liddel," he replied. "My runaway bride. My business partner. My forever." The city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in the distance, a cab horn honked, a reminder of where their story began. But this wasn't an ending. This was just the beginning of everything they'd build together. And it was going to be extraordinary. Thank you so much for joining me on Clarice and Ethan's journey. If you love the story, please hit that like button, drop a comment telling me your favorite moment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Where are you watching from? What part of the story resonated most with you? I read every single comment, and I love hearing from you. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best love stories start with the courage to run toward your freedom. Stay strong, stay brave, and I'll see you in the next story. Red Heart.